No, come on, man.
I don't like him. I don't like that offense.
Oh, 100%.
I like Kirk Cousins. I'll fight everyone on this.
He's one of these guys that I'm a big believer in.
Who would we have ranked higher right now?
Are you serious? You don't actually believe that. Hey everyone, welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Bobby Sylvester, and Tags is back. Yates is here as well. We have a fun episode today. Tags, what's going on, man?
Nothing, man. I'm happy to be back. It's weird when you go from talking like every day with you guys and like to trying to get away from football for an entire week. But I did my best, and I will say I'm happy to be back. I'm happy that NFL season is upon us. We're finally in August. I mean, we're basically a month away from the start of the NFL season. So I'm psyched, man. Thanks for having me back.
Yates, what's up, dude?
Not much, man. I'm happy to have Tags back. Tags and I high-fived each other on the way out the door on vacation, right? So I was gone 2 weeks ago. Tags was gone last week. So we haven't talked on the podcast for 2 weeks. So I'm excited. The gang's back together. We're ready to dive into this.
I have a problem with this, though, okay? Because, Yates, you and I are cool. We're rocking the backwards hat. Tags never wears a backwards hat. Tags, change it, man.
So I'm a hat guy that I need to explain a backstory here. Is that when I go to buy a hat, I go into a store and I legitimately try on like 30 different hats because it has to fit right, it has to look right, and
I can totally see that, man.
And here's the thing: and forward hats are different than backwards hats. Like if I wanted a backwards hat, I would get one of the bigger like baseball type hats. You know, like almost like that people wear the flat brim ones.
Yeah.
Those are the ones you wear backwards. The ones you wear forward are golf hats. You cannot wear a golf hat backward. It just looks dumb. Like it doesn't contour to the front of your head at all. It's all bad.
I think you don't want to do it because it shows more of your face. Yates and I are trying to show more of our face because that's what the people on YouTube at youtube.com/fantasypros want to see.
So many.
Tags, they want to see more
comments.
of your face too, man.
So many comments.
Exactly.
if you guys come at me and tell me you need to see more of my face, then I'll come with a backwards hat.
All right, guys. Before we get into the show, first of all, let me tell you what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about running backs the entire show. It's a running back rankings and tiers. So we're going to walk through 4 different groupings of running backs, give some of our favorites, give some of our least favorites. All 3 of us are going to be in on it. But before we do, guys, we have a gigantic contest going on. Like usually we give away something really cool like, man, a signed helmet. This is awesome. I'd love to have this in my cave. Listen to this, guys. A signed Davante Adams helmet. A $200 gift card for Pristine Auction, a $200 gift card for Porter Road Butcher, a package of fantasy football goods for your league's champion and last place loser from Trophy Smack, a 1-month subscription to Fubo TV, and if you sign up to youtube.com/fantasypros, if you subscribe to our channel and take a screenshot of that, then that qualifies you for a bonus prize, which is a Zoom call with us fantasy analysts. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. That is a huge package of gifts. All you need to do is head on over to Apple Podcasts, leave us an honest review, take a screenshot of that review, and also the youtube.com/fantasypro subscription, and send those to us at contest@fantasypros.com. If you want to see the details, a refresh on the whole package that we're giving away, the details are at fantasypros.com/contest. And once we get to 7,000 reviews on Apple Podcasts, we're going to pick one lucky listener. Again, it's fantasypros.com/contest. You guys ready to roll?
Yep.
I'm as ready as I've ever been because I have not talked, and well, everybody knows. Everybody that listens to the podcast.
Tags is about to go on a 10-minute monologue.
Probably.
At least the Bears aren't playing horrible football right now because that would take up like a third of the show.
Stop.
I remember when the Bears lost it on, I think it was Sunday Night Football, and Tags just lost it. And the thing is, like, a lot of people listening would be like, oh, man, that does not sound like something I would enjoy listening to. Anytime we can get feisty Tags, it is good. So hopefully we can get some feisty Tags today. Yates, you think we can pull that out of him?
Oh, let's try it.
You know what? Hold on, real quick. You know what? I was on Pat Fitzmaurice's podcast yesterday, and you know what he brought up, and it like legitimately almost gave me a nightmare, like a nightmare while I was awake. That
Nick Foles, David Montgomery, Jay Cutler.
That the Bears signed Isaiah Crowell.
Oh, no.
I said it would be fitting, honestly, though, with basically, Jimmy Graham. I mean, just put them both there. Why not?
Whew, man, yeah, that would be bad. I remember last year when everyone was drafting Isaiah Crowell, or the year before?
They were drafting him every year. I wasn't one of them, though.
There was a tweet yesterday that came out that Delaney Walker at age 35 has been training for the NFL season, and I put out on Twitter, I was like, Ryan Pace, don't you freaking dare.
Well, they did cut a few tight ends recently, so it's possible.
All right, guys, we are going to start out in the workhorse tier, okay? typically, I mean, the workhorse tier actually has like 3 tiers within it, right? I would say Christian McCaffrey and maybe Saquon are in that top tier. McCaffrey might be in it all by himself. And then you've got another tier with Ezekiel Elliott, Alvin Kamara, maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon. And then after that, there's a bunch of guys, Kenyon Drake, Miles Sanders, Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs. So we're going to RB 1 through 15. This is the workhorse group. And Tags, I want you to give me one name that you like from this group compared to his ADP. Obviously, you like Christian McCaffrey, but he's going first overall. Who's going like 12th and you have up at 8 or something along those lines?
Yeah, I'm going Clyde Edwards-Helaire here. I mean, the thing is once you go to our website and you actually see the expert consensus rankings, we only use it for people that have actually updated their rankings as we've gone on.
Right.
So basically, it's a ranking update, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the RB11 right now. I am willing to take him as the RB7, and honestly, if you wanted to take him as the RB6, I'd have no issue with that. Maybe even RB5 if you wanted to take him over Dalvin Cook. I mean, we're talking about Dalvin Cook like he's a can't-miss player, but let's be real about it. The first 2 years of his career, he really wasn't on the field. He might be getting a big contract extension. We don't know what's happening there. There's a lot of a shake-up there. Stephon Diggs is gone. Obviously, that defense is going through some changes. They may not be able to run the ball as much. I can make an argument for Clyde Edwards-Helaire to go all the way up at number 5 overall. Am I going to take him there? Probably not, but RB7 is where I have him right now, and I feel pretty dang confident about that. There's really nothing not to like. There's no competition for him on the roster. DeAndre Washington is probably his backup. You're playing for Andy Reid, where Andy Reid continually churns out fantasy relevant running back. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was my number 1 running back in this class. He's a true 3-down back. Patrick Mahomes wanted him. Like, he's texting him during the draft saying, I want you on my team. And it's like, okay, Chiefs say, we're going to go get him then. This guy is going to be on the field. He's fantastic, and he's going to see a lot of 6-7-man fronts with the speed they have on the field. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire, don't worry about rookie running backs, because I do an article that highlights running backs that have been drafted in the first round over the last 8 years. They average over 250 touches per season. The only running back that actually didn't get over, I think it was 198 touches, was Rashad Penny, who plays for Pete Carroll, and, well, we know how Pete Carroll operates. So Clyde
he was dealing with a broken hand. He gained way too much weight. I mean, there's a couple things that can really tank a running back.
For sure, and that's the thing. Barring injury, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to finish as a top 10 running back, hands down, and I think he has a chance to be a top 3 running back.
So I had him at number 5, Tags, but I've gone ahead and moved him down to number 8, and the reason why is I went back and I watched those 4 games where DeAndre Washington was running wild on the NFL. This is a pretty dang good running back. Now, neither of them know the playbook because they're both coming into it, no preseason games, and so Clyde Edwards-Helaire is definitely the superior talent. I just don't think this is going to be the 75-25 split that it was when Kareem Hunt took over and they had nobody else. I think it's going to be closer to 65-35 or 70-30. And so I've moved Mixon ahead of him, Dalvin Cook ahead of him, and I'm teetering between Derrick Henry and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Yates, where have you settled on Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
Yeah, I'm at RB7, and it's kind of for the same reasons that you said, Bobby, where you're looking at Clyde Edwards-Helaire first from just a body composition perspective, where he's 5'8", 207. This is not a guy that's going to receive the type of workload on the ground that Dalvin Cook is. Now, to offset that, he's going to see an immense amount of work through the air, right? He's going to be a huge factor in the receiving game. So I think, I talked about this on a podcast last week, and all of them are blurring together at this point, so I can't remember which one, but I said kind of expect the Alvin Kamara workload for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's kind of what you need to be expecting and kind of projecting here for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But with that in mind, I have him at RB7. I can totally see how he can get to RB5, RB4, RB3 with touchdown production. So I totally get it. And if there's an offense that you want to bet on for touchdown production, it's this one.
Yep.
I agree with that. Yates, your turn, buddy. Who you like?
There's a guy that I am absolutely rising on. I had him around like RB15 for the majority of the offseason, and that was simply just due to the fact that I didn't know, or I was projecting that they were going to be bringing in another running back in Philadelphia. Guys, it's Miles Sanders. I now have Miles Sanders up at RB8 after comments recently that the running backs coach, Deuce Staley, saying that there's not going to be a limit on his touches. They're going to be giving him the majority of the workload. Now, that doesn't mean that he's getting 100% of the carries. Very few running backs in the NFL get 100% of the carries, if any. So, what we're talking about here is I still expect Corey Clement to be somewhat involved. Boston Scott, as a pass catcher, will still be involved. But Miles Sanders is going to be the main guy in a dynamic offense. And with his skill set and what he showed on the field last year, there's no reason why we shouldn't be drafting Miles Sanders as a top 10 running back.
I agree with that, Tags. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I've been moving Miles Sanders up my board, inching him further and further up, but then you get to a point where you're like, okay, am I going to put him over guys like Aaron Jones? And I obviously Yates has already done that. And can we talk about this for a second, guys? Because it's one of those questions that I kind of, when I was doing the boom bust and everything in between, the articles that have been going up this week, I was looking at Aaron Jones and I said, why can't he be Alvin Kamara in terms of his efficiency
Aaron Jones?
Yeah. Yeah, because we draft Alvin Kamara as a top 3 running back without hesitation, right?
Right.
Top 4 at very worst. And we know that he doesn't get the touches that some of the elite running backs do, like Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley, and Christian McCaffrey, but he's always extremely efficient. And in the article I did based on how many fantasy points should a player have scored, which running backs were better than expected, over the last 2 years, Aaron Jones has scored, he was number 4 on the list both years in terms of fantasy points over what he was expected to do. So he's constantly efficient. The Packers obviously lost Devin Funchess. They don't have any other pass catchers outside of Devontae Adams, essentially. Jace Sternberger was supposed to take a step forward, but now he's missing camp because of COVID. There's a lot of question marks around this team. So why, I go back to it, why can't Aaron Jones be an Alvin Kamara type running back? And that's why I'm saying I don't know if I can move Aaron Jones or Miles Sanders over Aaron Jones.
I don't know, man. I like both of them. I think Aaron Jones is going way undervalued. I almost put him on here. RB13?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't get many touches last year. He was still the RB2, guys.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he can be Alvin Kamara, though, because he's not going to get anywhere near that amount of receptions. Yep. I agree that he can do it with the workload that he's getting. Not quite Alvin Kamara, but 49 receptions. Alvin Kamara averages 85, I think.
81. Yeah.
81 all 3 years.
Right,
that's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I knew that off the top of my head. No, I'm with you, Bobby. That's what I was going to say. Is that I think the difference between Aaron Jones and Alvin Kamara, as far as an efficiency standpoint, I think they're very talented, both running backs. But as far as what they can do on the field, Aaron Jones isn't going to see anywhere near the amount of work through the air.
Yeah, it's funny, man, about Miles Sanders because I had him all the way down at RB17 because I was like, dude, they're signing Devonta Freeman. Like, it's Doug Peterson. But everything is indicating that they're going to use him like the workhorse he deserves to be. And if you're talking about most talented running backs in football, I think Sanders is in the top 5, guys. If you're talking about best offensive lines in football, the Eagles are in the top 5, even though they had the injury. I think Miles Sanders has a chance to be a league winner this year. I'm going to have some shares. But, Tags, are you drafting Miles Sanders over Kenyon Drake?
No, Kenyan Drake. I go back and forth between him and Joe Mixon.
Interesting. Okay, because I couldn't decide between Joe Mixon and Kenyon Drake here. Kenyon Drake's my guy. Because I like Joe Mixon, but he's being drafted as the RB7. I'm taking him at RB5. Kenyon Drake, he's being drafted as the RB11. I'm taking him at RB8.
Yeah, that's the crazy part. And I saw the ECR. I was confused on this. I really didn't understand what was happening because Kenyon Drake was a guy that was moving up, and then all of a sudden you're seeing guys like Josh Jacobs and Miles Sanders and Edwards-Helaire move up. And all of a sudden Kenyon Drake is the number 13 running back in expert consensus right now. That's too far. You've gone too far in the wrong direction. Again, I released an article today. It's boom bust and everything in between on the running backs. And Kenyon Drake, once he came to the Cardinals, he essentially belongs in that tier with Derrick Henry and those guys up there. If you look at that sample. Now, granted, he may not have the touchdown. He's going to have some touchdown regression because he did score more than he was probably supposed to. But Kenyon Drake has been another guy that's been over-efficient all throughout his career. It's just he's now got a bigger opportunity. Knowing that the Cardinals got rid of David Johnson, it clearly shows that they're comfortable with Kenyon Drake. He's in a one-year deal. So he's playing for another contract. He has under 500 career carries. There's a lot of reasons to like Kenyon Drake so much, and yeah, he's someone I have up on my draft board. I have him at number 9, and again, it's number 8 or number 9. Him and Mixon are going back and forth because there are question marks about Mixon and his lack of usage in the passing game.
I mean, Mixon is a superior pass catcher to Kenyon Drake. He's a superior runner too, but it just depends on how the Bengals are going to use him.
Oh, if we were drafting on pure talent, Joe Mixon, would he be like the RB2?
Number 3. I think Saquon, Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, and then a huge gap.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Mixon's definitely in that top 3 too. He's so good, but that's the thing. As a fantasy analyst, you can't just point out when a player is good at football. I understand There's a lot of players. These are all great players at football, right? But you're just looking for the opportunity in the offense that they play and the offensive line they play behind, and those are things that factor into Joe Mixon. Because again, if we're drafting on talent, I'd take him up probably at number 3 overall. He's very, very, very talented, and it's the same thing with Josh Jacobs, right? Which is a good transition because he's the running back I don't like in the top 15 running backs at his current cost. He's the RB9 right now in expert consensus. I don't see anything that changed from last year with him. All I see is that this offense now has another quarterback on the roster. They may shift from Derek Carr if they want to. They have more pass catchers in Lynn Bowden. They have Henry Ruggs, Brian Edwards. They drafted all these guys in the top 3 rounds. So how does this add up to saying, oh, we're definitely going to get Josh Jacobs more? Do you mean like 3 or 4 targets more like on the season? Because I don't see a substantial increase for him. So to move him up there on a bad football team that's going to have limited scoring opportunities, I love Josh Jacobs, the player. But if you're saying that his situation is great, I think you're wrong.
He's a really good football player, man. And last year he did lose 10 pounds during the season. They started to use him a lot more after that. I'm not going to have many shares just because I'm more excited about the Miles Sanders and Kenyon Drakes and Clyde Edwards-Hilaire's of the world, but I don't think his ADP's too bad. I'm surprised you didn't pick Nick Chubb, man.
So for me, Chubb he's so dang good, and I feel like that's a team.
I think Jacobs is better than Chubb, maybe.
I don't think so. Well,
I'm not willing to
Jacobs
put him,
is a better
I'm not
pass
willing to
catcher.
say that yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Chubb is a very talented running back. But I actually do believe I've started to Chubb is teetering for me on that RB10 range. Like he's right there because I feel like he is one of the most talented 1-2 down backs in the game. But the lack of passes that he's going to get through the air, he's just not going to get a whole lot of targets. So that's why I worry about him. But so it's the same thing with Jacobs. But I think that Nick Chubb's going to be playing behind a better offensive line for an offense that I'm anticipating them running the ball a ton. Like if you look at Stefanski last year with Minnesota, those running backs averaged, I think it was over 30 touches per game. So
right.
There's plenty to go around between him and Kareem Hunt. And again, Chubb's the guy that's going to be there long term. So with Kareem Hunt in the fold.
Doesn't that make you think that they're going to be more likely to just give Hunt a ton of touches so they can save Chubb a little bit?
Not really, because he's on his rookie deal. You have to use a running back up, and it's no guarantee that he's there on a second contract. Running backs, they're used and abused, and it's really a bad system right now for them, in terms of the CBA. But Nick Chubb, I like him. I just think he's a safer play than Josh Jacobs is all.
That's fair. I just have a hard time drafting either of these guys because how many receptions are they really going to get? When Kareem Hunt was out last year, Nick Chubb had 27 targets.
Yep.
Was it 27 targets in 10 games? Well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, but that was also a different coaching staff, so I don't want to take too much away from it. But
sure, but they got Kareem Hunt. What are they going to do? Just not pass it to Kareem Hunt so they can pass it to Nick Chubb? No. Yeah. And Josh Jacobs, same thing. 20 receptions last year in 13 games.
Yeah,
it's not going to cut it for an RB1.
And they re-signed Jalen Richard, and then they drafted Lynn Bowden.
Yep.
So I just don't know where they come from. That's my issue.
Right. Yates, who's your guy? Because I'm obviously picking Nick Chubb. I'm going to have 0 shares of Nick Chubb, ADP 8. I've got him a running back 14.
Oh, wow, you have him down at 14. No, I get it. For someone to be drafted within the top 10 at the running back position, they need to be involved, somewhat in the receiving game, right? And I use somewhat, that's a very loose term. But with Joe Mixon, he saw, let me pull this up. I had it, give me a second. Joe Mixon, 45 targets last year. That's enough for him to be drafted within this top 10 if we are projecting that this offense is going to be better and he's going to have more than 5 rushing touchdowns, which I am. So at that point, Joe Mixon's up at my RB6. Josh Jacobs is going to get just as much work on the ground. He has just as good of a chance to score as many touchdowns because we've seen it. He was great on the ground last year, but he's not going to be as involved in the passing game. He's not going to even reach 45 targets. There's no way. So just with all that combined, you need to have this player, and that's why Josh Jacobs is my guy as far as this guy that I don't like comparative to ECR within the top 1 to 15 running backs, because where I have to draft him and where I think his ceiling is or his floor, with his receiving ability, it's not there. It doesn't match up. So there's going to be a disparity. There are some other guys that I like ahead of him, and it's the same kind of argument with Nick Chubb. If you draft a guy within the top 10 and he's going at RB8 right now, like you said, Bobby, he needs to be involved in the receiving game to give him a safe floor. Otherwise, it's just not going to be there.
All right, let's turn it back around and go with somebody that we do not like in this next range.
In the next range, are you talking about the 16 to 30 range?
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, it's Yates' turn. I'm sorry. It's Yates' turn to give us a guy he doesn't like.
I just gave
Jacobs.
I just gave it Jacob.
Okay, so let's move on to the next tier. I'm sorry, guys. All right, here we go. Starters with question marks. RB 16 to 30. Tags your first again. Who do you like?
Who do I like? I like Jonathan Taylor a lot. And I've already talked about rookie running backs. For whatever reason, there's a conception out there that you can't draft rookie running backs. You can't feel confident with them. I I'll take the discount all day long. You're getting him an RB22 right now. Have you seen the pictures of Jonathan Taylor?
It's
like
ridiculous.
The dude is built like a linebacker, and he's playing behind one of the best offensive lines in football. Doesn't have a quarterback who's going to steal any goal line touches. You know what I mean? Like Nyheim Hines is a guy that people are excited about for whatever reason, and he's someone that Frank Reich didn't want to use even when they were short on running backs last year. So I don't think that's going to happen. He is similar to Nick Chubb in the fact that he's not going to be receiving a whole lot of targets. I would say the cap on him is maybe in that 35 target range, and that's okay. Again, when you get down to this RB22 range, this is a Nick Chubb type running back. These guys are very similar on first and second down in the fact that they get downhill, they're going to get what's blocked and then some because they're going to break some tackles. Jonathan Taylor proved that he was a workhorse at Wisconsin. People want to talk about Marlon Mack being the starter when the year begins. I don't buy that because Jonathan Taylor was a guy coming into the NFL draft that people talked about as a guy that has so many miles on his frame because Wisconsin used him so much that, is he a one contract player is what people were saying about him. So you don't sign a player like that early in the second round if you're going to keep him on the bench for a year or mix him in with a timeshare with Marlon Mack, who's been highly inefficient as the Colts starting running back. So Jonathan Taylor is the RB22. I definitely dig the value there because the upside is the upside for him being a top 12 running back is certainly there.
I think this is the one player I have the most trouble ranking because he's got this incredible offensive line. He's one of the best running back prospects we've seen in a decade, in my opinion. But Marlon Mack's there, and I have no idea how they're going to use him. Could he be a league winner? Yeah, definitely. Could he just, not start until week 5 and everyone is kicking themselves for drafting him in the 3rd or 4th round? Yeah. I don't know what to do with him. I don't have many shares, and I might really regret it. Yates, what do you think?
I am rising on Jonathan Taylor because I do think, I get what you're saying, Bobby, with Marlon Mack's presence there. And Nyheim Hines, right? They've been talking up Nyheim Hines, and so I don't think he's going to get much work on the ground. I think he's going to be more of that pass-catching complement because you look at Marlon Mack and Jonathan Taylor, neither of them are phenomenal pass catchers. So you need that presence out of the backfield, especially for a quarterback who is as immobile as Phillip Rivers at this point of his career. So you need that quick check down. I think Nyheim Hines is going to be fine from a receiving perspective. But there is more than enough work on the ground in this offense for both of these running backs. And when I say that, I have Jonathan Taylor for 250 rush attempts, guys. I have Marlon Mack.
Dang!
I have Marlon Mack for 140. There is enough because Phillip Rivers isn't going to take many rushing attempts. I have him down for 19 on the season and 19 rushing yards. so
do you have Taylor RB12
there? 1 yard per
250
carry.
rushes?
Yeah, dude. And there's more than, and I still have enough for Nyheim Hines with 56 rush attempts. So we need to talk about this offense that is going to be able to run the ball efficiently, especially behind that offensive line. They're going to lean on their strengths. I don't think they want to put the ball as much in Phillip Rivers' hands at this point of his career, especially after what we saw last year. Now, he's still going to have enough passing volume to support 1 or 2 receiving options, but this is going to be a team that is built through the run game, and that's Jonathan Taylor. So I have Jonathan Taylor, 250 rush attempts, 1,150 rushing yards. So this guy is going to be phenomenal. I have him all the way up at RB14, guys. I'm rising on him pretty quickly.
Dang. Okay, yeah, you have him very high, and I'm looking at the most accurate experts last year in terms of running back rankings. Pat Fitzmaurice, number 2, has him at RB15, substantially higher from the rest of the pack. Robert Wozniak from the Fantasy Footballers, RB16. That's pretty high, guys.
Yeah. No, I mean, like what Tag said, I think it's very difficult for him. I think it's very difficult for him to get into the top 12. Right, if all these guys stay healthy, right, that's a big if this year, right? But if all those guys stay healthy, they're going to see more receiving work than Jonathan Taylor. Easy. I only have him down for 27 targets on the season. But at this point, with as much work as he's going to receive, there's no reason why he can't have a Josh Jacobs type season from last year.
Tags, I just can't put him over the safe guys like Melvin Gordon, Le'Veon Bell, James Conner, Leonard Fournette. We know all these guys are getting the vast majority of the touches.
No, and I don't think you have to go that far to say you're going to take him over Leonard Fournette or anything like that. But I have him right now at RB17.
Leonard Fournette's RB17 in ECR. Gordon's 18, Connor's 19, Bell's 20.
I'm seeing, Fournette, there's question marks around Fournette, okay? So this is a tidbit I came across yesterday when I was researching some stuff, is that, did you know Jay Gruden has never had a running back finish higher than RB13? Obviously, Fournette's been highly inefficient behind that offensive line. The team is going to be in negative game scripts quite a bit. That defense is horrendous. I think a lot of people are projecting them for the number 1 overall pick next year. And to know that, that he brought in Chris Thompson with him, it's going to steal a lot of that passing down work. And that's where Fournette really got his value from last year. Because it really wasn't on the ground, even though he did get tons of work. It
wasn't the 3 touchdowns and 340 touches.
Right. And so to be clear, I have Jonathan Taylor 1 spot behind Leonard Fournette in my rankings. I have Fournette at 16. I have Taylor at 17. So they're right there because I think Fournette's the safer pick in terms of like guaranteed volume, but I think the upside is actually higher with someone like Jonathan Taylor. I think the upside's higher with someone like James Conner.
Who are you taking, Jonathan Taylor or David Montgomery, Yates?
I literally have them at RB14 and RB15 separated by half a point in my projection model. So literally, I'll take whichever. I mean, I'd love to have both. I think I can get both in drafts right now with their current current ADPs. Man, I can't talk today. Jeez. With their current ADPs.
I think we all have allergies here
what the
in the
heck
Midwest,
is going on?
man. Recording a podcast in the morning.
Pass it over to me? Jeez. No, I think I can get both of them. At this point, I'm fine with either. I'll take whichever one falls lower.
I think the correct answer is Raheem Mostert.
I don't think so.
All right, let's see here. I'm going with Todd Gurley, guys. I just posted a tweet as we're recording this podcast. I just realized that Todd Gurley is going in the same round of drafts as Devin Singletary, who's my opposite guy here, the guy that I don't want in this range. I mean, Devin Singletary is not a starter with question marks. He's one of the slowest starting running back in the NFL, one of the lightest starting running backs in the NFL, one of the worst pass-catching running backs that's starting in the NFL. And then they go out and they get Zach Moss, and I went back and I watched his tape. Tags, you were right, man. I was wrong. This guy is good. He's by far the best running back in the room. He's going to steal the job from Devin Singletary. Like, if we're talking about, J.K. Dobbins might steal it from Mark Ingram, Zach Moss is more likely to steal it from Singletary in my mind. There's no chance I'm taking Singletary anywhere near Todd Gurley, who again last season was a solid running back, even though they cut down his passing game work. That's not going to happen in Atlanta, man. Devonta Freeman, as you talked about, Tags, had 60 targets last year. Mm-hmm. Todd Gurley's getting at least that. He's a very good pass catcher. He's on a 1-year contract. They're going to run him into the ground. And how many games has he missed since he came into the NFL? Is he injury prone? No, he's not injury prone. He's just playing through an injury. And guess what? When he did that, he was the RB1 back-to-back seasons. Last year he wasn't because they didn't use him as much. That doesn't mean he can't be used that much. I'm taking Todd Gurley all day in the 4th round. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, the discount is there for and he's fallen. It shows when you go on our website on FantasyPros.com, you can actually see a player's ECR if they've fallen, and it says Gurley has fallen 2 spots in the past week. So experts are moving him down for whatever reason. I don't know why. Again, this is a high-powered offense. Playing for the Rams last year, I don't know if anybody would have finished as an RB1 behind that offensive line, and like the lack of usage in the passing game was ridiculous. Like the Rams targeted their running backs fewer than any other team in the NFL, and it wasn't even close. And that's kind of crazy, right? Like when you think about everything. But Todd Gurley going to Atlanta, it's almost like a David Johnson thing, but you have a player who didn't look done at the end of the year. Todd Gurley looked fine. He looked perfectly fine at the end of the year. He looked bad at the start, whereas David Johnson, last time we saw him on the field, he looked terrible. So the fact that those guys' ADP is getting closer and closer together, it kind of blows my mind, especially knowing the offenses they play for. So yeah, Gurley is definitely a value for me.
Yates, where are you taking Todd Gurley? And since I already jumped ahead of you and said my negative guy, where are you taking Devin Singletary?
Yeah, no, Todd Gurley is someone who is an absolute value right now in drafts. He obviously comes with health concerns. We can't pretend that isn't there. But if I can get him as my RB2, where I don't need to rely on him, right? Like if you draft someone as your RB1, they have to be the cornerstone of your team, your fantasy football roster. With Todd Gurley and his current draft price, you're not depending on him to be that. So in this offense, if he can stay healthy, right? If he can just stay healthy and he can play all 16 games, my goodness, he's going to finish as a borderline RB1. And you're getting him way later than that. So I have him in that range. I have him just outside my top 12 running backs. And so I'm all in as far as getting him as an RB2 and someone that I can plug into my lineup. And if he starts to struggle, then I didn't invest as much, right? If he misses time with injury, I can put him on my bench, I can put him on my IR, and I can feel okay about it because I didn't invest as heavily of a draft price into him as I did. With Devin Singletary, and your arguments, Bobby, I think it all depends on what you define as the job, right? You said like he's coming to take the job. I was never projecting Devin Singletary to be this 250 carry back. That was ridiculous. I didn't see how in the world you were going to be able to give Devin Singletary that type of workload. So I always had him as kind of this change of pace back, this guy who's, you mentioned everything that's going against him, and by 40-yard dash metrics, he's the slowest, pass catching, whatever, all that, the guy's elusive as hell, right? We have to talk about that. This is one of the most elusive running backs in the NFL.
He reads the hole extremely well, too.
He's, so everything that he does screams a change of pace back, but at that point, I have him down at RB31. With Zach Moss's involvement, he's not going to see the type of workload that is going to return value on where you're drafting him right now. So I totally get your argument, Bobby. That's someone that I would personally stay away from as well at his current draft price.
Tags, Singletary is RB26 right now in ECR, ADP 22. So he's going ahead of guys like, let me see here. He's going ahead of David Johnson, Jonathan Taylor, David Montgomery, Raheem Mostert. I cannot see that. How far down do you have Devin Singletary?
I have Singletary at RB28. If you draft him as an RB3 or a flex, you'll be fine with that. You won't be mad about it, but understand that you're missing out on some potential upside that you can get from players in that range. That we talked about already. Jonathan Taylor, there's no reason that Singletary should be going ahead of him. Worst case scenario, Jonathan Taylor's involved in a timeshare, and he's better than Devin Singletary. Right. Singletary was inefficient as a receiver last year. Zach Moss, I was talking to Graham Barfield about this. We were doing a draft on Sunday, and we said that the gap between Singletary and Moss and ADP or ECR, whatever, it doesn't make sense because, these guys were both drafted in the third round. It's not like they have any allegiance to Devin Singletary. If they really believe Singletary can carry the load, they wouldn't have spent another third-round pick on another running back. They clearly want this to be a timeshare. We've heard the GM talk about it, saying we're going to have Zach Moss go into that Frank Gore role. He's a much better receiver than Frank Gore. He's a better receiver than Devin Singletary. So this is going to be more of a timeshare than people realize. But again, if you're looking for Singletary to post RB3 flex type numbers, I think he can get that done for you. Similar in the range of someone like Kareem Hunt. But again, if you take him over Kareem Hunt, you might get a higher floor week to week, but you're also missing out on the upside because if something were to happen to Chub, Hunt is like literally a top 5 running back. If something happens to Zach Moss, then you're going to probably see TJ Yeldon mixed in. But
and Josh Allen still stealing 10 rushing touchdowns, so it doesn't matter.
So the ceiling for Devin Singletary would be what? A high-end RB2 maybe?
Yeah, if that. So, it's all about expectation management, right? Like what are you expecting to get out of Devin Singletary? If you're expecting to get an RB2 where you're drafting him at, you're going to be disappointed. If you expect that to use him as your RB3 or your flex, like Tag said, then you'll be fine.
So, Tags, who are you taking, Devin Singletary or Ronald Jones, who I think has more upside and about the same amount of safety?
Yeah, it's Ronald Jones. I have Ronald Jones at
me too.
I have him at 25 right now. So, and I might move him ahead of Mark Ingram. I really wish we got to see more of what the Ravens were going to do in that backfield because J.K. Dobbins worries me. I mean, Mark Ingram is someone that's moving down my draft board quite rapidly, every time I get in a draft, and even though he's next in my rankings, he's he's the guy that I don't want to pull the trigger on. So I keep lowering him down my draft board because I try to stay true to that stuff. So, I mean, I would take Ronald Jones.
Same exact conversation for me. I got Jones at 27, Ingram at 26. I can't figure out if I should put Jones ahead of him, but yeah, Singletary's down at 32 for me, so it is definitely Ronald Jones. Now, Yates, we get 2 from you, buddy. Who are you going with?
Yeah, David Montgomery for the player that I like in this range. That's no surprise. There's, if you've been listening to the Fantasy Pros football podcast for any length of period this offseason, you know that David Montgomery is my guy just purely based on workload. If we're talking about a talent level, well, sure, you can talk about his lack of vision in between the tackles, but this guy, again, same argument as Devin Singletary, elusive as hell, breaks a ton of tackles, has great contact balance, has these things that I want in a running back. But then as we're talking and moving the conversation from NFL talent to then fantasy related, this guy is going to receive 270 carries. And his workload through the air should go up as well if we're talking about Nick Foles taking the starting job, where he's not going to be scrambling as much as Mitch Trubisky was. So at that point, it's going to lead to more checkdowns when he's on the field. So everything is pointing to David Montgomery being an absolute value this year. And I know that it doesn't feel great pulling the trigger on him, but when you're talking about him at RB25 in ADP and RB24 in ECR, both of those are just extremely surprising to me because I think he's going to drastically outperform that.
Tags, how do you feel about David Montgomery? Just how high do you have him?
I am at RB22. So, I mean,
yeah, me too.
It's weird because I see his ADP creeping up a little bit because it was at RB26 a little bit ago, and I said that's his absolute floor where you're getting him. And then it's creeping up where now it's like RB23, I think it was. So I think he's becoming more valued the way he should be. My concern here is it has nothing to do with competition on the roster because he has none. My concern is that the Bears really didn't do anything to upgrade their offensive line, which looked like crap last year.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if Matt Nagy doesn't get better as a play caller this year, then it's going to be running into a brick wall. So he has to get a little bit more creative, but he is going to get touches, and that's why if you're going to take that late round running back approach or middle round, whatever you want to call it, if you end up with, like, let's say that you wait until the fifth, sixth round to take a running back and you get Le'Veon Bell and David Montgomery as your running backs, I don't think you should be mad about that because these guys are going to post RB2 numbers at least half the time. And again, going back to that article I wrote this week, it kind of shows what to expect out of running backs. I don't think people realize, even the guys that they draft at the top of drafts, like outside of the elite, those top 4 running backs that we continually talk about, top 5 running backs, if you get a running back to post RB1 numbers 40-50% of the time, that's a lot. That's a real lot. So getting RB2 numbers consistently out of someone like Le'Veon Bell or someone like David Montgomery, that absolutely has value. He may not carry you to a fantasy championship, but he can be a part of a fantasy championship winning team because you need stability on your roster.
Especially if he's your RB3, man. You give me this guy in the RB3 all in the flex all day, baby.
Yep.
It's weird because I don't love David Montgomery, but where he's being drafted, I just don't get it. Like you said, Tags, that's his floor. Yates, who was your negative guy?
I didn't mention him, but I will mention Cam Akers. In this range at RB28 in ECR and ADP.
Right. Can't believe he's in this range,
I know.
man.
This is his ceiling, in my opinion, in this offense. Now, people want to be drafting him to be Todd Gurley and the potential for what he could be in this offense. Everything that we are hearing from the Rams coaching staff this offseason has been that they want to utilize a committee approach. They want to use Darrell Henderson. They want to utilize Cam Akers. They want to utilize Malcolm Brown, maybe even John Kelly. So these guys are all going to be involved in this offense, and if that's the case, Cam Akers is not going to see enough work to be, to return value on RB28. He's just not. And so, and especially too when you factor in the fact that I watched a lot of Cam Akers tape at Florida State, right? That's one of my big things is that I watched over 500 games of tape on this past draft class, right? So watching Cam Akers, I saw terrible vision. I saw terrible decision-making behind, and yes, the offensive line at Florida State is atrocious. I'm not going to pretend that isn't the case. Guys, this offensive line in LA is not that much better, right? It's not a great offensive line. So those things, Cam Akers needs to be utilized as a pass-catching back out of the backfield, get him into space where he can utilize his athleticism to begin. He can certainly develop on his vision. He can certainly turn into a great back down the road. But for this season, it's just not going to be there. I don't think so.
Sometimes when you're a running back, though, if your offensive line is trash, I was a running back, so that's why I'm talking about it. Sometimes when your offensive line is trash, you got to try anything you can do to create. And so I think they might be able to coach that out of him. I mean, this is a skilled player. I think that Cam Akers could have been good. If he would have landed in Indianapolis, I'd be drafting Cam Akers, no doubt about it. But he didn't. He landed with the Rams. And it's between the Rams and the Bears who have the worst offensive line in football. Maybe the Bengals are still in that conversation, but it's one of those three, right? He's not going to do anything, especially in a 4-back committee like Sean McVay said it's going to be, Tags.
Yeah, he's clearly said it's going to be more of a committee moving forward. And again, if you have a team that doesn't target the running backs, that cuts into a lot of production fantasy-wise. Right. So you start capping the ceiling there. And then you talk about the offensive line, Yates. Yeah, I'm with you in that, and that the Rams are a bottom 3 offensive line in football, and they didn't do anything to address it. It's similar to the Bears in that way, where it's going to be really tough for him to post that high yards per carry. I don't know if this should be considered a high-scoring offense anymore with the changes that they've had. The Rams have potential to be a bad football team, and it's kind of crazy to think where we've gone now. Sean McVay he's a smart young individual, and I'm sure he'll adapt to things, but I don't think Cam Akers is good enough to make it work behind this offense. He's not Saquon Barkley. Yeah, I'm with Yates on this one. I mean, in this range, you get to the point where you're taking shots on starting running backs. I just think that there's better ones you can take a shot on, like a Ronald Jones, a guy that has played in the NFL. We've seen him succeed behind this offensive line. It only got better. Taking shots on guys like that rather than, Cam Akers or even if DeAndre Swift, but yeah, I'm out on Akers as well.
Oh my goodness. I just saw Deontay Johnson go at the start of the 6th round in my Drafting with Giants draft. People chill out on Deontay Johnson. He might not even start.
Oh, he's starting. He's starting.
I'm willing to put a bet down on that. I think James Washington is pretty dangerous.
I will absolutely
I'll
take that bet.
All right, yeah. I need some odds. That's obviously not 50-50. The difference in their ADP.
What do you mean it's not 50-50?
Yeah,
you just said that you'd bet on it.
Yeah, you said you'd bet on it. Then you don't
get
to change the terms
I'll bet on
of the
it
bet.
with the odds that everyone seems to consider it.
You didn't say that. You just said I don't think it's a given that he starts. You're like, I don't even think he starts.
Yeah, and on a previous podcast, Bobby, you said that James Washington is going to start over him.
Yeah, I do think he's going to. I'm just trying to get better odds too. I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this bet, maybe I can get even better. All right, we'll figure it out after the show. But regardless, Tags, you need to give us your guy in this range that you don't like.
All right. Well, I was going to say Mark Ingram, but I already kind of talked about him for a moment, so I'll just mention Darius Geis. I mean, we've been here before, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, have we not learned our lesson by now? If we haven't learned our lesson by now, we're probably never going to. And it's not that I'm rooting against the guy, but not only is it a low-scoring football team, it's a bad football team. They have the offensive line is again among the worst in the NFL. I don't want anybody here. You don't re-sign Adrian Peterson back to sit on the bench. Adrian Peterson is not going to sit on the bench and get 5 carries. It's just not going to happen. So they're going to give him touches, whether it be, even if it's only 8 to 10 touches per game. That's enough to take away from Darius Geis' upside, which is already limited in this offense. So, yeah, Darius Geis, I really don't understand why people are drafting him inside the top 30 running backs or even ranking him there. This is ECR we're talking about. Why is he a number 30 ECR running back? Why?
Thank you.
All three of the guys that we mentioned, Cam Akers, Devin Singletary, and Darius Geis, there is no chance I'll have any of them on my team. I'm so glad we brought all three of them up. And frankly, I think Darius Geis is the best one to bring up, Tags. I can't believe my eyes just glazed over and was like, I got to talk about Devin Singletary. But yeah, it's Darius Geis, man. If you draft him in the top 30 running backs, I don't think you want to win your fantasy league.
Yeah, I just don't get it. I mean, we've been here before. Like, really, what's the reward? What is the reward with Darius Geis? That's my question. If there was a reward of maybe getting a top 15 running back, I don't think that's possible behind Washington's offensive line in that offense. Like, that's another team that is contending for the number 1 overall pick.
Yep, I agree. I would agree with that. Let's move on to the next range, though. These are the guys that are basically role players. They're starting the season as role players, or they're high upside handcuffs. So give us one that you really love. Yates, you get to go first this time.
I don't know why he's considered in this category. It's Jordan Howard. Like, how is Jordan Howard still considered this role player? Like, he is the starting.
Because Matt Breida, one of the two is going to start. It's probably Howard, but
yeah, no, I get it. I totally get it. But what I'm saying is, I don't think he should be here. He needs to be higher because he is going to receive more than 220 carries on the ground. Now, does he have top 15 upside? No, I'm not sitting here projecting that at all.
Sure.
But we need to be remembering just how good Jordan Howard is as a running back. Public perception on him is super down because of last year and the fact that he was injured, but yet we still saw him produce in this part-time role, mixing in with Miles Sanders. Like, he still had some really good games. And so now that he is the clear-cut starter, in my opinion, I don't think Breida is anything more than a change of pace back. He's never been anything more than that in his NFL career. So why are we projecting now that Matt Breida is going to be this guy who takes the majority of the carries when Jordan Howard has seen 250 carries the majority of his career each season, right? So Jordan Howard being a starting running back that you can get at RB 37 in ADP, guys, RB 33 in ECR. That's the thing that's mind-boggling too, is that the experts are down on him too. I'm ranked at RB 26, so I'm higher on him. Again, I'm not sitting here saying that he has top 20, top 15 upside, but he's going to produce for your fantasy roster, and if we're at this spot in the draft, that's the players that I want to be taking a shot on.
So who do you have him over? If you've got him up at RB 26, who are a couple guys that you would take him over?
Yeah, let me look at this. I would take Jordan Howard over Raheem Mostert, Phillip Lindsay, Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, Sony Michel. Those are some of the guys, especially Cam Akers, Ronald Jones. Those are the guys that I would be taking Jordan Howard over.
So, Tags, what do you think is going to happen with Jordan Howard this year? Because I'm looking back. Rookie year, RB 9. 2017, RB 10. 2018, RB 20. 2019, he missed 6 games and was still RB 38, which is about where he's being drafted right now. I mean, I think he's the starter in Miami. And if he's the starter, wouldn't you love to have him as your RB 4 or even RB 3? I'd be comfortable with Jordan Howard.
He's the starter for sure. He's one.
You think so?
He's
Matt Breida is good, man.
I mean, what'd they give up?
Fastest player in the league.
It was like a 6th-round pick they gave up for him.
Right, and they brought in Howard first.
That's true.
And he hasn't been able to hold up to a workload. So I think that the idea is to timeshare these backs. I think they make a good duo between the two of them. It's like a thunder and lightning thing where Jordan Howard is not lighting the world on fire in terms of like he's not lightning.
Sure.
That's Matt Breida. You just said one of the fastest guys in the league. Jordan Howard, is he a little bit boring? Yeah. Is there a place for that in fantasy? Yeah. I don't know if I'm not going to draft him as high as Yates is because I'd prefer to take some shots there. But if you get down into like that RB 34 range, that's where I kind of feel like where I'm okay taking a shot on him because I guess it comes down to team roster and the build that you have because Ronald Jones is right there with him at 31 in ECR. Jordan Howard's 32. I'd take Ronald Jones because I think the ceiling is a little bit higher. But again, it all comes down to what you're looking for. Tariq Cohen is a safer player, in my opinion. If you're playing in a half PPR format, I think Tariq Cohen's safer. But again, if you're looking for stability and you're looking for a guy that is not going to crush your lineup, and he's going to get 12 plus touches per week. So there is a floor there. And there's a little projecting going on here because you have to wonder, okay, what's the game scripts? Because we know Jordan Howard is not a great pass catcher. It's been multiple teams now where we've seen teams say they're going to use him in the passing game, and it just doesn't happen because he's just not a good receiver. There was one game where the Bears, I think he had like 6 drops in one game. I'm not kidding. He's not going to be there. So it really depends on what you're looking for out of a running back. He's never going to finish as a top 18 running back with Miami with the state of that team where it's at, especially the offensive line, because he's gone from a team with the Bears. When he was with the Bears had one of the top 12 offensive lines of football. Then he went to the Eagles, who were top 5 in football, and he obviously fit that zone scheme very well. Going to Miami, they just rebuilt their offensive line, and I cannot say with any certainty that there's one player on that team, on that offensive line, that I think is over like above average. So that's why I rank them as my worst offensive line. They tried addressing it and it could work out, but especially in this offseason, I just don't know if the offensive line is going to come together.
Yeah, I mean,
I love their draft.
Benefit, really quick, Bobby, the benefit here is that if like Jordan Howard is being drafted as the RB 22, 24, I would probably say like, okay, I'm out at that price tag, right? Like there are some other guys that I'd probably be looking to take, to be drafting him over, but RB 37, guys, like you can get him super late, like Bobby said, is your RB 4, RB 5 in some places if you're building, if you have loaded up on RB heavy early on and you like some of the value at wide receiver later. So at that point, I can roll Jordan Howard in as my flex, as a bye week option, and he's a fantastic option to fill in at that point.
When I say RB4, I mean that's not exactly where he's being drafted. He's being drafted in the low end RB3 range, but here's the thing. Pretty much everyone who listens to our podcast is going to be waiting on quarterback. A lot of them are going to be waiting on tight end. We're all going to be loading up on running backs early. And so if you're taking a 4th running back, it's going to be in this, 8th round range where Jordan Howard's going. I think he's a very solid RB4 that can fill in during bye weeks, and you don't have to rely on him every single week. You don't have to throw him in there in a bad matchup. So I'd feel comfortable having him. Now, the other guy that I like even more, I think he's safer, and I think he has substantially more upside. And I know you're going to fight me on this, Yates, but Latavius Murray, just because the Saints' running game for 10, 12 years has been phenomenal from a fantasy perspective, and it wasn't last year. They had some injuries, but I think that they're going to be able to get back to that. I mean, Tags, you mentioned it. Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara both finished in the top 6 fantasy football running backs. And Latavius Murray's a good football player, man. He's one of the best goal line backs over the past 5 years in football. He catches the ball. When Alvin Kamara goes down, he was the RB1 when Alvin Kamara was out. So I think Latavius Murray has standalone value, and I think he has league-winning upside if Kamara was to go down. So I'd love to have him as my RB4. Tags?
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on Latavius Murray. He's a
Over
guy
Jordan
that
Howard?
I think I probably so it depends on how you approach this, right? So Yates is a projections guy, and projections is going to tell you that Jordan Howard's better, but it's almost like a Kareem Hunt argument because Kareem Hunt is not going to be a top 25 running back or whatever in terms of like if you do pure projections. Sure. But if you factor in if the starter were to go down, what that means for his potential, that's where Latavius Murray moves up. Because I have him at 36 right now among running backs, and I have Jordan Howard at 32. But again, when it comes down to drafting, Latavius Murray might be the more appealing one, depending on where you're at. Like, I think Jordan Howard's probably going to be a better higher, it's almost like that Devin Singletary, Kareem Hunt argument, where you might get a slightly higher floor with Jordan Howard on a week-to-week basis, but the potential upside for Latavius Murray I think he comes with a better floor than people think. I think that the touchdowns in New Orleans, I was looking at that the other day. New Orleans going over their last 6 years, there were, in terms of rushing touchdowns, 14, 14, 14, 21, 20, and then it went down to 10 last year. I think that rebounds to somewhere around that 16 range. Obviously, sure. Alvin Kamara is going to see some more touchdowns. Latavius Murray is going to score some touchdowns. I believe that he's going to have flex viability more often than not, and then obviously with the upside if Alvin Kamara were to go down.
All right, Tags, who are you going with?
Who I like in this range, I mean, Ronald Jones, it would be dumb for me not to say him because I have him at RB25, and he's going, the ECR is RB32 on him. Now, I haven't had a chance to talk with you guys about this. Are you guys worried about Lashawn McCoy at all? Now,
No.
He's coming from Kansas City where Andy Reid, even though Damian Williams was injured and they really didn't have anybody else, he refused to give him more than 11 carries in a game. He looked like he was done. Obviously going to Tampa Bay, playing for Bruce Arians, not as good as a head coach as Andy Reid, not as good as play caller, I should say. I think LeSean McCoy seems like a depth piece, but at the same time, if we go back to Bruce Arians in 2015, maybe, when David Johnson was a rookie, David Johnson was on the roster, Andre Ellington was on the roster, and Chris Johnson was on the roster. And this is well past Chris Johnson's prime.
Are you
Chris
talking
Johnson
about JJ Zacharyason's tweet right now?
Did he tweet?
No, sorry. Keep going. I'll pull up JJ's tweet. He posted about this. It's fantastic.
Yeah, because when you go back to that, I've referenced this because David Johnson was a 3rd-round pick, which is like why people were talking about Keyshawn Vaughn. And David Johnson was a 3rd-round pick, and even though he was super efficient, they kept giving the touches to Chris Johnson, and Andre Ellington got some before he got hurt. So I just don't know if this is something against Ronald Jones. I don't know if it's something against young running backs. I can't pretend that there's not some risk there with Ronald Jones, so I don't think I need to draft him as the number 25 running back. But if I draft him around the RB 30 range, 32, that's fine.
What is his upside exactly? Because this is going to be a great offense.
If he's the starter all year long, he's going to be a top 15 running back.
Top 15?
Yeah, for sure.
Yates, you agree?
I mean, if he's the starter, if he can hold on to the job and he can be, more of a pass catcher out of the backfield, sure. I think that's a very, very narrow path for him to return value. Here was JJ Zacharyason's tweet the other day. So he said, in 2015, Bruce Arians' Cardinals signed veteran Chris Johnson after drafting a 23-year-old David Johnson in the 3rd round, who was looking to replace a speedy 3rd-year back Andre Ellington. In 2020, Bruce Arians' Buccaneers signed veteran Lashawn McCoy after drafting a 23-year-old Keyshawn Vaughn in the 3rd round, who was looking to replace a speedy 3rd-year back Ronald Jones. So for me with Lashawn McCoy, I think this is more of an insurance, just a depth piece. And especially when you're talking about if they do like Keyshawn Vaughn as much as I think they do, that especially in a shortened offseason, no preseason, Keyshawn Vaughn on the COVID-19 list, I expect him to come off of that, obviously, before the start of the season. But this is someone that you need as pass-catching insurance. If Ronald Jones comes out, again, remember, they haven't gotten their hands on Ronald Jones yet. Like, they're just getting him into the building. So they don't know if he's improved dramatically as a pass catcher. There's been rumors that he's been working on it all offseason. This is just insurance. This is to be able to say if Ronald Jones isn't there as a pass catcher, if Keyshawn Vaughn isn't ready to start the season, then we have Lashawn McCoy. We can plug him in on 3rd downs, and he'll be fine. He'll get 4 carries a game or whatever. And then, so what I'm projecting is Keyshawn Vaughn to eventually take over. I move Keyshawn Vaughn dramatically down my rankings with projecting Ronald Jones to start the season and still be heavily involved, Lashawn McCoy being involved at the beginning of the season. So all that kind of goes together. I think Keyshawn Vaughn is going to be a value later on in the year, and then I think Ronald Jones is going to be, is going to start out the season super hot.
You'd have been proud of me, Yates, in that draft I was talking about on Sunday. It was an auction, and I got Keyshawn Vaughn for, I think, $2.
Oh, there you go.
I saw that, man. When I saw you had Keyshawn Vaughn in your roster, I was like, hold on, were you drafting with Yates? Because there's no way you would do that.
Yeah, I said that's the only share that I will have, I promise. Ronald Jones went for like $25 or $26.
Oh, wow.
So here's the plan, guys. Wow. So here's the plan, guys, okay? We are going to go lightning round for the guys we don't like in this range. So just give a very quick analysis. None of us are even going to give our feedback. And then after that, we're going to give 2 complete sleepers that we like. Same kind of thing. We're going to move quick on that. So, Tags, who are you going with?
I'm avoiding Sony Michel.
Right. You too, Yates, probably, right?
That's it, yeah. Sony Michel was on my list.
Is that actually your name?
It is. Yep.
Okay.
Sony Michel.
I almost put Sony Michel, but I figured someone else was going to bring him up, just kind of like with Darius Geis. So I didn't pick him, but he would have been my guy. I'm going with Kerryon Johnson instead. I just can't see him holding off DeAndre Swift. And even if he does, in this offense, what's his upside? So don't really care. Let's go on to the guys that we think are solid sleepers. These are outside the top 50 running backs. Yates, you're first. Why don't you give us your 2 back-to-back here?
Antonio Gibson, rookie running back / wide receiver in Washington. Now, this is part of the argument, too, with Darius Geis, is that it's not only the fact that Adrian Peterson is there, it's the fact that they have Antonio Gibson. They drafted him. This coaching staff drafted him. Then you also have Peyton Barber, Bryce Love, J.D. McKissick, all on this roster.
And they called Antonio Gibson Christian McCaffrey, which is kind of a big deal.
Not there yet, right? But I think he's going to dramatically, dramatically outperform RB58, right? So I think as far as ADP, and he's RB55 in ECR. So I think he's going to dramatically outperform that. He's going to be heavily involved in the passing game. He's going to be taking away those targets as a slot receiver, I think, and out of the backfield. Yeah. So this is someone that I really like. And then another guy, there aren't a whole lot of options in this range that I'm super crazy about, but Josh Kelly. I'll stay on brand here. I'll bring him up. And,
sorry, man.
That was like the staying on brand for both sides, right? That was me mentioning Josh Kelly and your reaction to Josh Kelly.
Exactly.
No,
I had to.
No, I think Josh Kelly is going to be involved in this rushing attack in Los Angeles, and so if that's the case, he's going to be involved. He'll be higher than the RB63, which is what he is in ECR, and RB70 in ADP right now.
I think the process on Josh Kelly is exactly right. And that's why Justin Jackson's one of my guys, right? One of these two guys is going to vastly outproduce their ADP.
Right.
I think very likely within the top 35 running backs and maybe quite a bit higher. I think that one of them is going to get the Melvin Gordon role, and Austin Eckler is going to be the same exact player that he was last season, which is great, but we're not drafting him until the third round for a reason. Justin Jackson or Joshua Kelly is going to take over. I like Jackson more. Yates likes Kelly a little bit more, so it makes sense. Now, going back to the other name that you had, Antonio Gibson. Tags, I know I said we weren't going to talk about this a little bit. We do have some time, though, and I got to pick your brain about Antonio Gibson because I haven't heard you talk about him. I know the offense is just disgusting, but if you're looking at one of these RB5s in this range, Darrell Henderson, Duke Johnson, Nyheim Hines, Adrian Peterson, where's the upside with those guys? Wouldn't you rather have someone like Antonio Gibson who's just a complete question mark? He has like 20 touches in college.
I don't even know what his upside is, though. That's the thing. Again, we're going back. I don't want to own any Washington running back. Let me be clear about that.
Okay.
And that includes Antonio Gibson. I don't know what the upside is with him. Steven Sims, when he took over in the slot last year, he was really freaking good. Like, he was actually a good football player. He's used on special teams as well. Gibson, obviously, as you mentioned, he wasn't used heavily in college. And knowing that Peterson's there, that Geis is there, that Bryce Love is still on the roster, J.D. McKissick catches some passes out of the backfield. They signed Peyton Barber for whatever reason. Again, all these names just pile up and you're just like, gross. It's just disgusting. And I want nothing to do with it because, again, Gibson would need to be used as like a slot receiver for me to feel good about him. And even then, what's his upside? It's like, I feel like Antonio Gibson is going to be a Cole Beasley type player. And are people going to use that at year's end to say Antonio Gibson was a top 40 running back if you look at the overall numbers? But
he will be.
But do you ever put him in your lineup thinking, oh, this is exciting. Like, this is going to be really good. Usually for those flex spots, I'm looking for someone with a little bit more upside, like, John Ross on a weekly basis. I would rather put someone like that in my lineup.
But what if they give him 80 receptions and 150
He's not getting 80 receptions. He's not. I don't even know if
somebody has to catch the ball. They're going to be playing from behind all game.
Is Dwayne Haskins going to complete 80 balls this year?
Well, now they're saying that Alex Smith is competing for the starting job, which really scares me.
No, but seriously, Terry McLaurin's the number one, and if you think that there's going to be two pass catching options out of this offense, I think you're wrong.
Yeah,
it does help that there's no tight end on the roster, basically.
Right. That definitely does help. I'll just say, like, everything that Tag said, I'm in agreement with that, and I'm projecting him to be the slot receiver. So if we get news that as the preseason quote unquote continues and that they're saying that Antonio Gibson is going to be utilized just as a running back out of the backfield, whatever, then and Steven Sims has a starting slot receiver role locked up, then Gibson will come crashing back down my rankings. But projecting right now, based on the information that I have and watching his tape in college, that he should be the slot receiver, and I have him down for 83 targets. So he has the talent to be able to break away and make some big plays. I mean, he's a 229-pound running back with 4.39 speed. So this is a guy that can,
he's super. He's
great
electric
pass catcher
like that dude.
Yeah.
But again, like, I worry about players like that. Just not. It's almost like Mecole Hardman, right? Like, Hardman last year was crazy efficient and like he's fast and as hell. Even though Tyreek Hill was out, I think what did Hardman get, like 40 targets on the season?
Yeah.
That's what I worry about for someone like Gibson. Like, the hype is just too much, and it's almost like there has to be a transition for, you don't just go from getting 20, 30 touches in college to a giant workhorse
getting beat
role
up by humongous guys in the NFL. Yeah,
for sure.
Especially in no off season.
So I already said Justin Jackson. We don't need to rehash that argument. My second guy, is Anthony McFarland. And Tags, I know what you're gonna say. He's too small to be a starting running back in the NFL. I know you like Anthony McFarland because you think he can be a pass catcher.
Stop. I know where you're going with this.
I know exactly where he's going with it too.
I know where you're going with this, and I'm gonna poo-poo it right now because and it has nothing to do with it has nothing to do with his size. Nothing to do with his size. Absolutely nothing, because he can be a workhorse running back. But here's the issue. The Steelers don't view him as a workhorse running back. Like Mike Tomlin. So this is something that I think most people missed, and that's why I want to bring this up. Jake Seeley started talking to me about this during that draft, saying that McFarland's the handcuff, and I'm like, Mike Tomlin, you know him as a very honest coach, right? And he said, yeah, he's actually talked to him, interviewed him. He's like, he is very honest. Mike Tomlin, there was a quote that he did. I'm going to find it. He said, if James Conner is going to be our workhorse running back, he's going to go that James Conner is the guy that he's going to get the touches. We've always been a one-back system, and if something were to happen to him, Benny Snell is someone that can go on and fill that role. He didn't even mention McFarland, which tells me there's a completely different role, because again, you don't draft McFarland where you did without some sort of role in mind. You don't draft him to be the third running back on the depth chart. So I do believe that there's a role for McFarland, and I do think he's better than Benny Snell, but unfortunately, I don't think the Steelers do.
Yeah, but how many times have we heard this from coaches about rookies where they just don't include them because they haven't seen enough of them? Every single year, man.
But Benny Snell sucked. Whatever.
Yeah, you're right.
That's the thing, is like they've seen Jalen Samuels, they've seen Benny Snell, and that's why I think they drafted Anthony McFarland. I'm not saying he's not a bad lottery ticket. He's actually on my likes, Bobby. He was actually maybe one of the guys that I brought up. So.
Right. I was just trying to get ahead of the curve here, where I knew you were going to say, well, I don't think that they're going to use him in that way, and I thought it was because you thought he was too small.
No. Like, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Because most people listening, I mean, even though I couldn't trap you into this, a lot of people listening are like, hold on, Anthony McFarland's this little scat back. Yeah. You know who else is a little scat back? J.K. Dobbins, 5'9", 209. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 5'7", 207. Nick Whalen from, Dynasty Nerds? Yep. Dynasty Nerds posted that yesterday, and I retweeted it, and Anthony McFarland's the same size as those guys, 5'8", 208.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, every running back's built different. Like Darrell Henderson was a guy that was viewed as undersized, and obviously his transition to the NFL didn't go as some people expected.
Christian McCaffrey was undersized.
Yeah, he was.
He's the same size as Justin Jackson.
For sure, and that's why size to me means nothing. Like Ray Rice was one of the funnest running backs to watch play the game. That's Clyde Edwards-Helaire to me. That's how it feels. McFarland, just his skill set in terms of what I've seen him do, I think that he's going to be best suited as like that 8 to 10 touches per game type guy that you mix in. You get him in the passing downs, you get him in the open field, and like he's electric. I do like Anthony McFarland, and that's why I'm saying he was on my list of guys that I was going to say that I liked in like the late rounds, because I think he can give you some production even with James Conner on the field. But if Conner goes down, I think it would be more of a timeshare. Like I think they view Benny Snell as the actual handcuff, so it would just take too much time basically for McFarland to return a sleeper value is where I'm at.
I'm buying a lottery ticket preseason in case he is that handcuff, and we'll find out.
I mean, you're not going to draft your guy Benny Snell?
No, I'm not drafting Benny Snell. He's not my guy.
No, real quick though, can we all agree? Do we think that Deandre Washington is suddenly like one of the better handcuffs to own?
Yes, big time. He moved into my top 4. In fact, I've got him neck and neck with Alexander Madison.
Holy cow, you moved him up that far?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
What about you, Yates? Do you think Darrell Williams might have a role? Do you think Darwin Thompson gets some play if something were to happen to Edwards-Helaire?
Darwin Thompson will get. I think Darwin Thompson will be somewhat involved to begin with as the pass catching guy. Again, that's not a lot, like 25 targets on the season or whatever. So, but I think that DeAndre Washington will be the guy that you want to own in that backfield.
All right, Tags, it's down to you, man. Give us 2 sleepers at the running back position.
All right, so, McFarland was going to be on there. I talked about DeAndre Washington. Damian Harris, obviously I've mentioned him before. I think there's a chance that Damian Harris starts as New England's running back. And know what's crazy? In that draft, that industry draft on Sunday, Sony Michel went for cheaper than Damian Harris. I think that was too far. I already had running back stacked on my roster. I wasn't about to even go there. But that was a little bit too far, but it just goes to show how things are shifting. They both went really cheap. And I'm just going to go quickly into the ones that I dislike in this range that I wouldn't use a pick on. Adrian Peterson, we've already talked about him. There's just really no reason at this point. And then A.J. Dillon. I'm not drafting A.J. Dillon. He's like the new John Kuhn to me, where he's going to steal some touchdowns, but he's not going to get enough touchdowns to make him fantasy relevant because Aaron Jones is really good at football.
John Kuhn was one of my favorite players to watch, which is a really weird guy because they were like one of the only teams to use a fullback. And every time they'd give him the ball, even though he's this big old fat fullback, he would jump over some dude. And it's like, how did he do that? Why did he think that was a good idea? But it was always fun to watch him.
Really quick, news just broke. Ian Rappaport on Twitter. Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger tells reporters that he tore 3 flexor tendons off the bone, and it's elbow surgery he believes no quarterback has ever come back from. It's not a Tommy John, but somewhat similar and very serious. That he looks good and feels as good is impressive. That's terrifying.
That's not good.
That happened just now?
No. That like what?
I was gonna say, man, he's done for his career.
No, Rappaport tweeted that just now, but his injury from last year. That's what he's coming back from.
Yikes. Yeah, I mean, apparently he has zip on his balls, so.
It's a weird sentence.
Who are the free agent quarterbacks? Because obviously they're not going to roll with Mason Rudolph again if anything happens to him. I'm just going to ignore that.
That's an all-time podcast moment. I'm crying. I'm literally crying. Okay.
I mean, I think everybody's gone now, right? Maybe they can trade for Josh Rosen.
I thought you were talking about our podcast audience.
Oh, we gotta love Bobby.
Right.
Josh Rosen. I'm surprised Josh Rosen's not on a different team, by the way. I don't know why that hasn't happened.
Right. I mean, he's the third quarterback. He's not even going to be on the active roster, is he?
I mean, he has to. Well,
you guys are nerds.
Obviously, we have 80-man rosters now, so I mean, I'm guessing he will be, just in case. It's gonna be weird. It's a weird season, man. Again, I know I keep bringing this up, but in that draft, tell me how you guys think about this before we close out the show. People drafting 3 quarterbacks, 2 quarterbacks, like in a single quarterback league.
Well, we should be playing in leagues this year with 18-player rosters in my mind.
Right.
Oh, we did. This was an 18-man roster, by the way.
Yeah, it's all dependent upon how big the rosters are. But I'm not opposed to that at all.
If I have an 18-team roster, I'm definitely drafting 2 quarterbacks, and the only way that I would draft 3 is if all of the other starters are starting to go, and then I'm like, okay, I just need to go get Derek Carr before I'm playing with a backup, and maybe I don't have a starting quarterback because he's rolled out with strep throat because he has a temperature and they think it might be COVID. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah. All right, guys, that's all for today's show. Give us all a follow on Twitter if you haven't already. We're at Bobby Fantasy Pro, at Mike Tagliere NFL, and at Kyle Y NFL. You can watch our videos on YouTube at youtube.com/fantasypros. It's not just the podcast we have going on there. We have tons of videos, live streams every single week. And I also want to remind you guys that we've got a contest going on right now, a giant one. We're giving away a signed Davante Adams helmet, a $200 gift card for Pristine Auction, a $200 gift card for Porter Road Butcher, a package of fantasy football goods for your league's champion and last place loser from Trophy Smack, a 1-month subscription to Fubo TV, and additionally, you get a bonus prize if you subscribe to our YouTube channel and take a screenshot of that. And the bonus prize is a Zoom call with us fantasy analysts. If you want to enter this, just take a screenshot of your review on Apple Podcasts, and once we get to 7,000 reviews, we're going to pick one lucky listener. Send that screenshot to us at contest@fantasypros.com. And if you want to see the details for all this, it's at youtube.com/fantasypros. For Kyle Yates and Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening, and enjoy your football.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. While you're here, don't forget to check out the featured videos. While you're at it, go over to Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Fantasy Pros to get news and updates throughout your season to help you dominate the competition.